if you diverge from the path.
I make the path.
Because it's Alice in Wonderland, as a composer, you go, all right, there's definitely going to be some fun stuff in here.
That should do it.
But at the same time, Tim tempered it with, and it's going to be one of the hardest jobs we've ever done together. Tim's ear is really very specific. People think that we have some kind of miracle shorthand, but we really don't talk about it until we have stuff in front of us, until I can play him stuff, and then he can react. And then based on his reaction, I start to fine-tune it from there.
So just 14, 15, just a little swell at the end.
On all of our films together, there's a process we have to go through, and there's a bit of a road, and sometimes means circling around and doubling back. It's never a straight line. It's never that simple. The one thing I do know Tim well enough to know that there's nothing I can't play him. Knowing that, I'll try pretty much anything.
Lost my muchness, have I?
I was in my second or third presentation with Tim, and I was already laying out melodies and themes, and there was this odd one, and he immediately gravitated to it. He goes, "What's that? Play that part again." It's what evolved into Alice's heroic theme. In fact, it was for the longest time, it was just called Hero. And then it always had this melody, da-da-da-da, and the da-da was always in my head, Alice. And I told Tim, I said, the orchestra is saying Alice every time. He said, just go and record some stuff that I might use or cut or have that's not the picture, called wild tracks. So I love doing that, and that's where I have the most fun. So I wrote Alice Hero Wild. And I actually then had the choir singing it, and I had them go, "Oh, Alice." But while I was sitting in the airport before I came home, I was listening to it on my headphones. I said, I don't know why, but I should write lyrics. I'm just hearing, "Oh, Alice, dear, where have you been?" I just had to do it. I was compelled to do it. I wanted the boys to be singing the theme because it comes from a more innocent place, the sound of their voices, because their sound is less precise. It sounds a little more naive, a little more innocent, a little earthier to me, to my ear. It became my favorite piece. I really do think as a composer, especially a composer of big films, you have to hold on to yourself and you have to lose yourself at the same time. This is a very personal thing for Tim. Each of the dozen movies I've worked with him on, I've got to follow him into a different place, and it's always been really interesting because I never know where I'm going to go with him. So it's kind of like he's my guide.
Are they always this way?
Following him on this one was particularly delightful. It was a very strange and interesting place.
Wonderland wasn't a dream at all. This place is real.
It was important that they felt like they were both in the real and unreal world at the same time.
Well, this is a very unique project. I've been in visual effects for a long time, and to have a project like this where you're throwing so many different disciplines into one project makes it that much more fun and unique. We have some of our characters that are full live-action characters. We have some characters that are regular keyframe animations, so just traditional CG characters, the March Hare, the Dormouse, the Cheshire Cat, and then there are some hybrid characters.
This way of making the film makes it complicated because you now have to blend elements of live-action, CG, and motion capture. You have, interaction between someone who's actually on set in makeup, interacting with something that's not there, or interacting with someone that's in a motion capture suit.
Well, if it's not my favorite trio of lunatics.
Motion capture basically records the movement of whatever the sensors are hooked to.
They gave me a neoprene suit because I have all of these electronic things on that help sense where my body is.
So when Crispin's performing and he's doing a scene, all those mannerisms, all the hand gestures and all the body language is all being recorded, and then that's applied to the animation of the armor, and then that's put together with his head.
It is Crispin Glover's real head on a computer-generated body, but moving just like Crispin Glover's body really did when we were shooting on stage.
I've never worked so extensively with green screen before, and it is something that seeps into your brain by the end of the day.
The green screen vibe is not a very friendly vibe, so you want to keep it moving and keep things going as much as possible.
So I'm of this kind of entire world of green, and I'm wearing green, and it's an odd feeling.
I don't quite know how he navigates everything because he's on stilts, and he's got one eye because he wears an eye patch, and he's in the leotard, poor fellow.
It's my crown, and I'm the eldest! Jabberwocky!
A similar thing with the Red Queen, where, you know, she's an all live-action character, but we're doing some things. We're taking her head and increasing it by 50 to 75% of its normal size.
I think probably my head's been growing for some time. You know, there's probably a tumor in there, and it's been pressing on the bit that controls the emotions.
You know, it wasn't just as much as enlarging her head, but her neck goes along for that ride as well. So you can imagine if you turn a person profile and you enlarge their head and their neck would no longer fit on their shoulders. So what we had to do is some pretty intricate tapering of the neck and the jawline to kind of get it to fit back into this design collar.
The subtleties of blending her head into her normal-sized body has been difficult, but it looks really interesting. So you kind of say, all right, what's great about that is it takes you to a mid-ground point, which is a real person, but manipulated and slightly mutated, so not quite real. And it's like this missing link between the CG world and Alice, who's always normal looking, even if she's 20 feet tall.
Bandersnatch is a pure 100% CG character. He's kind of half bulldog and half grizzly bear. Totally made-up character, never really seen anything like it before.
Our goal was to go with a slightly more naturalistic approach to the animation.
Bandersnatch is particularly problematic because his fur is so long. To get all of the sort of like fine details to get something that looks, you know, just fantastic is computationally very, very expensive. You know, for a creature that is this large and what it's supposed to do, we want to get little, you know, subtle details and emotion. So we are going to start adding in, like, you know, drool coming out of the mouth.
Make it feel like he's really kind of wincing at that moment. Well, you just got to feel like it's really squishing into the eye socket, and it kind of hurts a little bit when he shoves it in there.
Each of those things kind of helps just get a sense of realism into image. Every little, you know, bit just keeps adding a layer of complexity.
And it's the most important thing, I guess, it's that it has a soul, that it's not, it's artificial, but it shouldn't look like that.
Who is this Absalom?
He's wise. He's absolute. He's Absalom.
And then there's two fun characters, which are Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
You know, the Tweedles were always my favorites in the books. I always adored them. I thought there's no human that can be that sort of funny or cute or sweet or bizarre. And Tim found him, Matt Lucas.
Hello there, friend. How you doing? All right. I've put on a little bit of weight recently. Can you tell?
No. Yeah. The way we have to photograph them is Matt Lucas plays both characters. He has another person, his double, that's working with him, who's also in this kind of teardrop-shaped green suit, and they play off each other. So they can interact, they can have dialogue back and forth. But what we do is, as soon as we've shot Matt as D and Ethan as Dumb, we then have to switch the roles, and Matt has to play the opposite character.
We do a few takes as one Tweedle, and then we swap. And so you have to remember your timing and things like that. So it does require a great degree of concentration.
And so then what we end up doing is we take the two performances of Matt Lucas, and we end up splitting those two performances together to create one master plate, and that's used as our reference for our animation. And eventually what we will end up doing is take that performance of Matt Lucas's face, and we're calling it face pasting. We'll take that performance and actually stick it onto the CG character, so you'll have this CG computer-generated character with Matt Lucas's actual face integrated into it.
There's a lot of pieces and puzzling, putting things together, and in a weird way, kind of like a Polaroid photo, like you really don't see a shot materialize until the very end.
It's a nice blend of the worlds, I think, to help you just kind of believe everything you're seeing.
My job is to make sure that the action and the fight sequences are performed in a safe and interesting manner. When they give you the script, we break it down. We have to figure out how we're going to perform some of these stunts. All sorts of interesting ideas that were on the script were brought forward. It's our job to figure out how we're going to shoot it.
I think the Jabberwocky's here, right?
Then you have a testing phase, a rehearsal phase, where you put a stunt person out there, have them do the action, you videotape it, and you show the director, and he gives his input back.
Don't look at it there. You don't see the tail coming.
And then you go back and rehearse it one more time until you have it precisely ready to shoot with.
And crane!
It's an incredibly physical role. I never imagined it to be that physical. Even something like jumping into a pocket or crawling off a hat onto a shoulder is a stunt.
Go!
We had Mia up on a wire in a harness.
Come on back down.
Perfect.
Good.
Get any more.
All right, let's go ahead and hook her up.
Wearing the harness was kind of difficult thing to do because I had to be under the costumes a lot. And I had to be in it quite often. And as much fun as it is to be flying through the air, which that was, you know, one of my favorite things, it's like a really kind of painful thing to be in for a long time.
I want you to really try to get it in there as deep as you can.
One of the hard things about sword fighting is that it's not something that you can learn in a couple of hours. It's kind of requires a lot of strength, you know, particularly in your wrists and in your arms and your whole upper body.
You know, this movie has got so many great elements. We had someone ride a dog, rode a hat, you know, do a sword fight. We have some amazing action in this movie.
Why is it you're always too small or too tall?
It's so frustrating being a different size in the film. It is really frustrating having to be, you know, 8 feet tall and then 6 inches. You know, I have to be on platforms. A lot of the time I have to have different eye lines, so there's a lot of acting to sticky tape and to tennis balls.
The weird thing about this material is that she's very rarely the normal height, and again, it's kind of like awkward growing pains, you know, it's kind of experiencing that on a physical level.
Been growing an awful lot lately.
Well, if you've got Alice when she's, for example, 8'6" tall, with her eye line there is at 7'11", and she's talking to the Hatter, they've got to be looking in the correct attitude. So we built little platforms to raise the actors up. An old movie trick is called a man maker, which was an 8-inch block. You could put a row of them along, look big and tall. So on this show, we've got Tweedle makers and Stain makers and Alice makers, and they're all at various heights. And then Ken's guys at Sony will expand Alice around her eyes.
Traditionally, in most effects films, you'd say, well, we'll shoot the Hatter and we'll move him out, and then we'll shoot Alice. Now, sometimes we have to do that. Other times when there's a lot of close interaction between the characters or it's a really emotional scene, I tried to do it all in one. So the Hatter's there with Alice, except she's 8.5 feet tall, but she's got her hands around his face and she's talking to him. And I absolutely did not want to break that up. It wouldn't have been the same performances from either person.
That's better. You look yourself again. The fun part of being different sizes is being able to film in a teapot or film on a set where there's a giant table and, you know, a key that's this big that you can hold like, you know, a weapon or something.
Try this on the side.
It's only a dream.
My name is Joan Spittler, and I'm one half of the Cake Divas.
We got a phone call from the prop master, and he came by. He was like, "Can you do this?" I was like, "Yeah, of course, we could do this. Can't we?" You know?
For me, as a baker, it's like a dream job.
You're all late for tea!
We were lucky enough to work on some of the key tea items from England in the Victorian times. We made little baby 2-tier fruit cakes, pies, fruit tarts, little scones.
Pass the scones, please.
I just remember the prop master looking at me and saying, now, look at this table and memorize it, because once the scene is over and it's completely demolished, you're gonna have to reset it. And it was like, so much detail. We had to reset that table about 12 times within 5 to 10 minutes. That's it. The thing that I am most proud of is the Eat Me cake. I physically had to practice writing Eat Me so that I could recreate it exactly each time. And then we have the challenge of creating it to scale for the baby set.
Are we gonna like get one of them blades with a magnifying glass and write Eat Me? And Joan said, yeah, kinda. So we did.
There is an actual Eat Me cake recipe. You know, I did a lot of research and tried different, really old-fashioned recipes. And we ended up with the very traditional old Victorian recipe that was a brown sugar molasses cake. We also had to make sure that it was edible for the actor to eat because she was doing multiple takes.
Not all of it.
So she was biting into that 30 times. This is fondant. It's a sugar dough made out of corn syrup and powdered sugar. Fondant is great under camera lights because it doesn't tend to sweat. That's why they use it in England too, because it kind of keeps the cake in this shell form. It doesn't have the moisture or butter content that a traditional buttercream might have. If you did a traditional wedding cake and put it in front of the lights, it would just melt away.
Would you have any more of that cake that made me grow before?
I don't know that the Eat Me cake will be a Cake Diva specialty. I kind of will reserve that for Alice and Tim Burton and this whole experience.
It's like being a part of history, that we were able to help make it a reality.
I was just so happy to do it.
You're all late for tea!
The tea party in Alice in Wonderland is probably the iconic scene. And we took that challenge to the next level, which is come up with a look of not just the characters, but the way the table is laid out.
There's a bit more of a depression over this particular tea party.
Like having tea in a wartime period, and they were doing the best they could in difficult circumstances.
It's a hodgepodge of cutlery and dishware and tables that don't line up.
And sort of all that little cattywampus angles and mismatched chairs, mismatched china. And we augmented it with, you know, various leaves and berries to make it look like they had been at the tea party for quite a while and they weren't so tidy and there was tea stains.
You know, it's our goal to provide the highest quality, the most authentic thing that we can, but those things exist only in museums. So we have to sort of photograph that, look at it from every angle, and try and do that real thing justice.
And somehow it created this unique look, and it fit the characters.
I like it. The Mad Hatter steps up and he just walks all the way from one end all the way across the other, stepping through food. He's breaking china.
And the logistics of that, of like clearing off all the smashed food, because we had big cakes and pies and, you know, scones and pastries and things that, you know, once you step in it, you know, it kind of follows you down the table.
We got 3 of everything. Doug got breakaway pieces, and then very quickly we had the painters try and match those breakaway pieces as best as we could to the pieces that we had found all over. There's, I'd say, maybe 150 pieces on the table.
For the actors and for everyone to see a tangible, beautiful thing like that, it's so important. When you're working in a green environment, to have a real thing there becomes everyone's focus because it's the only real thing there.
It just sort of really came together, and it's fantastic.
Goodbye.